Hey guys, my name is Toby and welcome back to another very exciting Photoshop tutorial where today we're going to be taking a look at the Perspective Warp tool. Now this is a really cool little tool that will let you alter the perspective of your shot after the fact, and it's a really useful thing to have in your arsenal for correcting things where maybe your perspective has just been a little bit off, or artistically doing something really interesting with your shots. So let's take a look at this image here. Now we've got these three kind of walls, and I think it would be quite nice to maybe try and flatten this wall out or just do something a bit more interesting with it, and we're going to do that with Perspective Warp. So we're going to go up to Edit and we're going to select Perspective Warp. Now it's going to change your mouse icon to this little thing here, and basically when you click and drag it's going to let you start drawing planes, and what we're going to try and do with these is match our perspective in our shot. So really I can see sort of three planes that we need to worry about here. We've got the back wall and then the side walls here, and I'm just going to try and line this up sort of with this corner, and we can use the sort of intermediate grid lines here just to make sure that we are matching our plane as much as possible, so sort of where the window is and all that good stuff. So okay, I'm quite happy with that one. Now we need to do the second one, so we're going to click and drag and draw a second grid, and then when you move two edges like this close enough together, they're going to snap to blue like this, and what that means is when I let go they're going to join together and become part of the same grid. So we can now start to try and match up our perspective of this window, and you know, like I say, you can use these grid lines just to make sure we're going to match it as closely as possible. The closer you can get it, the better it's going to be. Just because if you don't match it, it can start to do some weird things sometimes. It kind of depends on what you're doing, but generally speaking, get it as close as you possibly can before you do anything. That's the best way to go about this. And for this last one, I'm going to need to zoom out a little bit here, so we can snap our grid lines together, and we'll just bring this down. And you know, you want to make sure you're matching the verticals as well as the horizontals, so we'll get that looking pretty close there, I think. Okay, I think that's pretty good. So now that we're sort of fairly happy with our perspective grid here, what we need to do is swap the tool over into warp mode. Now currently we're in layout mode, as you can see up here in the top left, and this basically means that when we start moving pins around, you know, we're still kind of arranging our grid and getting the tool ready. When you're actually ready to start doing stuff, you swap it over into warp mode, and now when we start to move these pins, it's going to try and alter the image. Now one thing to note, this isn't just like stretching out the image and doing some weird stuff to it. According to Adobe at least, this is Adobe intelligently calculating what the perspective would have looked like had you actually moved your feet. Obviously in this case, I don't think this is a shot that you could have actually gotten in real life because we're physically changing the shape of the building, but you know, we can suddenly make that space quite different than how it initially started out, so we can actually match the perspective of our two side walls there to do something just totally bonkers. And what we can actually do, if you want to straighten out the verticals, if you click this one here, it's going to try and perfectly straighten everything. Now I think that's a little bit weird for this. You can also do the same thing with the horizontals by clicking this one, and again it's a little bit weird, I think. Or you can do both at once and click this again, which is really weird, not quite what we want to do. Some images that works really well, but what I want to do is straighten out some of these lines here, but I don't want it to move everything around. So what we can do is if you hold down Shift, you can click these lines, and if you click a horizontal or a vertical line, it's going to make sure it snaps to be perfectly horizontal or perfectly vertical. So that's looking pretty good, and now to finish our warp, I'm going to go ahead and hit Enter. And here we go. So we've now got our image, and what we actually want to do, I think, in this case is we're going to crop it in. Now, sometimes it might be better to sort of do like content-aware fill and kind of fill in those edges, but I think in this instance, that's kind of what we wanted to do. And, you know, it's not perfect. It's a little bit distorted in a couple of places, but it's a really massive change to how we started out. If we look at the original versus what we've now ended up with, we've totally changed how this shot looks and what this space looks like into something that isn't. And I think that's really, really powerful. So to give you another example of something you can do with perspective warp, we've got this image here of a road somewhere kind of out in the middle of nowhere. And we can actually change the angle at which this photo is taken. So we're going to go up to Edit, Perspective Warp. And then I'm going to draw a grid, and we're not going to worry about sort of all the converging lines and stuff in this. We're basically just going to draw something across the horizon line like this, and then we're going to do the same thing above. So this one's nice and quick, and we'll just make sure that these are nice and straight, so we're not going to be changing stuff too much. There we go. And now we're going to jump over into warp mode, and what we can do is if we shift click that center line like this, the other thing that shift clicking a line does is it now actually locks these 2 points together. So now I can actually just click this and start dragging it down, and we can drag this really, really far down. You can see how much that is actually changing how this shot looks. And we can go ahead and hit enter. And I mean, what a colossal difference. It almost looks like somebody put the camera on the floor to take the shot. Now, this is a really extreme example of this, and possibly it's over the top. You can kind of see where the clouds have actually been stretched a little bit, and it's not really worked. But if you just needed like a shot of a road from this perspective, and all you had to work with was, you know, this, then it's a really cool way to at least get this bottom element. I mean, what you might want to do maybe in this case is like, you know, replace the sky or do something a bit different in that respect, but it's just an incredibly powerful tool to let you do some really awesome stuff. And the examples I've shown you are really over the top uses of this. You can just use it to correct little errors in perspective in your shot. If you're, you know, maybe half a foot to the left too far, you can just kind of tweak it and get it kind of back to where it was, and it'll look incredible. But I think that is going to do it this time, guys. Thank you very much for watching. My name is Toby, and we'll see you next time.